Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Law of One Spiritual Advice Podcast. My name is Elle, and I come back again today to read some Law of One material and share with you my opinions on it. And today I actually have a particular topic that I want to speak about, and it's probably going to get a little spicy around here, so stay tuned. Today's topic is basically, I want to kind of go around black magic, and that may sound a little wild, but more about like the media and just how we are manipulated by service to self elite, if you will. Okay, so that is the idea. It's going to be about black magic, inversion of truth, and like what is magic, right? And so let's go into that. So I have two sections that I have pulled from the raw material, the Law of One, which you can get through my website, the oneinfinitecreator.com, and then we have links to the LL Research where you can download all of this stuff for free. And thank you to them for that. So this is going to be from session 71.15, and I've added in session 73.11, just two real small sentences, and then it will just allow me to talk about these other things. So let's begin. The quote is actually just from the questioner, because the Law of One material is like a question-answer type thing. So the questioner is just asking about how to define magic. They basically give a rough definition of magic as the ability to create changes in consciousness at will. So what is magic? The ability to create changes in consciousness at will. And then I just wanted to add on from session 73.11, a little ways later. They're describing, magic and the magical personality. And Ra describes, quote, "In the magical personality, desire, will, and polarity are the keys." Okay, so that just sort of gives you an idea of magic. It's, I suppose when you think of magic, you think of like waving a wand and casting some sort of spell where you can see light and whatever, or, maybe you have a wider idea of magic, but that's just a very gross idea. So if you think about it like this, they're saying it is the ability to create changes in consciousness at will. So I suppose, what do we have to do first? I guess we have to define what reality is. Reality is sort of a holographic illusion of the one, which would, in my opinion, kind of be described as everything that you see, everything that you feel and experience is a holographic projection, meaning like every bit of the infinite one is created within every cell of creation. So within every little tiny bit of creation, there lies the infinity of the whole. Okay, so maybe that shows you how you are this sort of entity within creation, and it's a very much sort of a subjective experience. Even though there may be objective things that happen to you outside of you, everything is an internal experience. Everything runs through the way that you perceive things, and you have different biases and perceptions, and those will be different from everyone else's biases and perceptions. Okay, so there's your sort of idea of what your reality is like. Now consider that basically means that most of reality is just consciousness. It's just thinking. Everything is sort of affected by you consciously accepting something or going towards it, but more specifically the group of the entire earth. As our group consciousness points in a certain direction, then that allows certain things to manifest. Okay, so that's how you can kind of go from a consciousness magic to manifesting a physical thing, which, in shows they make it seem very quick and spontaneous, and maybe it's not like that, or maybe it is, but here's what I want to talk about. So what I want to talk about is how the media inverts the truth. The truth... So there's, first of all, on our planet, right, there's service to others and there's service to self, and we're at this time where we're sort of being encouraged to choose one of these two paths, and the service to self path is a path of the elite. And the elite is like that pyramid that you see all the time, and there's just essentially the master service to self person at the top, and then a few below him, and then more below that, and more and more and more below that. And the thing about the service to self path and those groups is that well, you have to think about it. They're all strictly on the service to self. They don't really care about anybody else within their structure except for the sake of it improving their life somehow. They only do something to gain something from it, to gain a benefit from it for the self. So everything is essentially the nature of the service to self path, if to make it simple, is to manipulate others for the benefit of self exclusively. So you're not necessarily going out serving others and then serving yourself. Like, that's what the service to others path is. The service to others path is, you accept that you are part of the creator and so are others. It's not necessarily one path or the other. It's the service to others path includes both. It includes service to self and service to others, versus the service to self path, which tries to deny the service to others thing. It just says that, no, it's just me here. I'm here to manipulate for the benefit of me. That's what the nature of me being here is. So with that long sort of background here, let's go into how they would invert the truth in order to essentially gain our permission, our group consent from the earth, all our group consciousness, to have us consent to things that are not really in our benefit. It's really what they're trying to do to us is to have us voluntarily enslave ourselves so that they, the elite of the service to self, may teach us the service to self lessons that they're here to teach, which is basically them saying, hey, I'm going to voluntarily enslave you, and if you voluntarily enslave yourself to me, you can either move up the hierarchy by taking part in this shenanigans, or you just become a pawn of this. So it doesn't really matter, right? It's just sort of like they'll fit you wherever they fit you. And what matters to them is that they've inverted the truth and gained your consent to essentially kind of respect your free will, but they don't really care about your free will. They just care about the magic not coming back to them. But how do they do that? They do that through having you voluntarily give up your power. And then it's just sort of like, well, we told you so. So let's go into that. I'll give you a brief just example of an inversion of truth. It was beautiful. I just saw a commercial the other day, I think on YouTube or something. It was a commercial for the lottery. And so this is how they would invert the truth. It's just really simple. They'll just literally sell you the opposite thing, but tell you that it's this other thing. So the lottery commercial was, they say, it's easier to save with $1,000 a day. In other words, they're trying to say, buy our crappy lottery tickets and waste your money on it. And if maybe you win, yeah, you'll get the $1,000 a day. Of course, it's easy to save money when you've won the friggin' lottery, right? So it's just ridiculous when I see that, just so obvious, and they shill it just so blatantly and with like no care. And I think that the more blatant they do it, the more that people just don't second guess it. They just think that this is natural. Like, yeah, I should go spend my money on lottery tickets because like that is like saving. Like, yeah, if I win, that would be great. But that's the whole idea. It's like to invert the truth so that you give up your consciousness in power. Like, you're basically giving your power to someone else. Like, money is energy. You put time and effort into making that money, and now you're just like giving it away to some entity, or some, a company is an entity, right? You're just giving it away to some entity that just wishes to just take things from you to benefit themselves. So there you go. There's one example of inversion of truth, and I've got actually a lot, but I don't want to go too much into that. I want to talk more about how this is black magic instead of white magic. So what is white magic? They actually explained it earlier in the Law of One material, which I didn't write down, but they described white magic as the joy created between union with the creator. So that naturally is going to end in service to others, right? So if you're going to do white magic, you're just doing it to benefit other selves. You're doing it maybe even to benefit yourself. There's a possibility you're creating a space or something so that you can further help the planet, right? But you have to try to be careful with that and not play ego games with yourself and be like, yeah, I need this to make the earth vibration better, when reality is like you really just wanted it because it was going to make you comfortable or something. Okay, so how do these negative elite how do they get away with it, right? How does it not come back to them like in karma? And I would suggest it's because the nature of the service to self path is this specific lying and cheating and manipulating you, to basically get around that, to have the catalyst that returns to them only be sort of catalyst that is more for them to control. But anyways, I'm getting off a topic here. The idea is free will. So they put the truth in plain sight. So if they put the truth in plain sight, there's sort of this thing that, hey, you know what? The information was right at your fingertips. We told you this is what we were going to do, and you knew that this was where this was headed, and yet you still chose to go ahead with it. And therefore, that was your choice. And therefore, we have nothing to do with that. We we as the elite service to self, we have maybe offered you this choice. Yeah, we absolutely did. But it was a choice. And with that is why this whole free will and consent thing comes up a lot, is that if you freely give your consent and your free will and take part in these sorts of things, it's unfortunately, even though it was sort of done in your ignorance, it's not completely a reason to, it's not really an excuse. You still have, you still gave up something. There was choices that you made. I would suggest, if you go back and look back at your life, if you've ever feel like you've been tricked in this regard, and you probably did make a choice, and maybe it just wasn't as conscious as it is now. It's not as obvious as it is now. But the truth is laid out for us to see. And then remember the nature of the holographic illusion that I was speaking of. It's sort of noted that you might think, well, you don't know my experience, but I mean, from my understanding, this is just the nature of reality. Like every time that something important happens to you, you must be given a choice. Like if you seek to serve others, you'll create an opportunity where you have the ability to serve others or serve the self. The power that to make it an actual choice, the universe has to offer you that. And the nature of this third density is that it's called the choice. Like the nature of this third density is the choice. You're to choose service to others or service to self. And that's the nature of all the catalyst here, is to push you to choose one of those and then, take it further, I suppose, into the heart if that's the case. But there you go. That's sort of how they put the truth in plain sight, so that it just allows them to kind of get away with it. It's sort of like, well, you should have been a little bit wiser to what we were doing. We told you. And I can maybe should I mention some things? No. But, there's been a lot of like, even you can consider them like conspiracies, right? But really some conspiracies aren't necessarily just fully made up. Some of them you go and look, and there really are these things that were just put out there that, like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is here for you if you'd like to see and prepare and make a different choice. And if not, well, so be it. You've made the choice that we were kind of hoping you'd make, and we pushed you towards it. And how do they push you towards it? Well, let's go into that. So I talked about I was kind of thinking how they had us thinking about the whole pandemic thing for a couple of years, right? And it just seems that on a dime, just when all of that was subsiding and everyone was getting over it and wanting to get back to some sense of normalcy, all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's wartime. To what degree those are coincidence or not, I'm not necessarily suggesting that I know, but it's still obvious that the focus of media is to have you in fear. There is a wider perspective that you can have in life, where you're not just looking at the TV. This TV and this internet and this great connection that we have across the globe is amazing, but at the same time, it's created an information highway where we kind of get to choose what sort of information comes towards us. But the thing is that the media that we watch is very much chooses, I would suggest, to have you being in a state of fear. And why would they do that? Well, if I've talked about chakras a lot before, it's to get you into a lower state, to get you into those lower chakras, into these states of fear, these states of survival, these instinctual states, animalistic behaviors. It's basically to get you into a chaotic emotional state where they can just suggest things that will just push you in certain ways because your emotions are super easy to manipulate. It's like, I don't know, give you a small example. Anytime you want to manipulate someone, just show them something about children, right? And you, it's like, it almost doesn't matter what the solution is that they're pushing. It's like, oh, if you bring up the poor children or something, it's just so many emotional states are just immediately engaged because obviously those are sensitive subjects, and it can have people just doing insane things that they don't agree with, right? So why would they want us put on to fear? And I would suggest, really, if we're going to go into it deep, I suppose this is a Law of One podcast, it's to keep you out of your heart. They state elsewhere in the Law of One material, the whole goal of, if you're being sort of attacked, maybe let's say by a service to self entity, physically or metaphysically or whatever, their whole goal is to just get you away from service in any way. It's like, that's sort of another way of saying just to get you out of your heart chakra. It's just, they don't care whether they get you back into fighting amongst community in your third chakra, or fighting against yourself and anxiety and fear in your second chakra, or just, shriveled up into a state of survival and unsurety in your bottom chakra and your red ray. Like, all of these are great outcomes for a service to self entity interacting with somebody who's trying to step into the heart. So I don't know, I suppose my whole point of telling you all these things is not so that you can take advantage of them and manipulate other people. It's just so that you can be aware and be wise to the tricks of the tricksters, right? Like, what do they say? Like, brainwashing doesn't work on you once you understand the mechanisms of it. All of a sudden, once somebody starts to do something to you, once you're aware of the mechanisms of it, it's just obvious. It doesn't work anymore. It kind of takes your ignorance, your willful ignorance, for all of this to work, which is kind of sad, to be honest with you, because it doesn't take a lot of will to wake up. I know, like, this sounds silly to say wake up. I like to try to say we're not woke, we're awake, but it doesn't take a lot of will to actually do these things. In my opinion, all it did was just me wanting to know the truth about life and reality. This is what brought all of this stuff that's coming out of my mouth to you. Like, the only reason I know this is because I sought these answers. You seek and you will receive. Seek, knock on the door, and it will open. So the news wants you focusing on these larger fear-based scenarios, and I'm not trying to say that ignore them. I'm just trying to say be wise about how much energy you give to a situation that you have no control over, or have very little control over. And then what I was explaining earlier about trying to have a wider perspective, what I was trying to get at is that I've heard in the material elsewhere, from Quo, like they explain that if you just look at your community, you're going to see a lot more love and truth and honor and beauty. If you're just looking at the news, you're looking at a filtered set of information, which sometimes they give you good stuff, sure, but a lot of it is still mainly fear-based, so that they can kind of have other people in power who are just trying to manipulate you into whatever ends that they have. And so if you're instead looking for a positive perspective, look to the community, look to like your neighbors. Just do something within your community, do something yourself, right? But anyways, that is that part. Okay, we've talked about consent and free will. Being tricked is no excuse. I have a few bit more examples of inversion, right? So remember I was saying how they pitch something to you as if it's a truth, but it's an inversion of the truth. Well, like, here's some more examples. That George Orwell guy, right? War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, fear is love, all these sorts of things. We can convince people that we need to invade a place for democracy, and then really we were just there to install a Western dictator puppet so that we could get some oil money. You know, it's like it's really sad because you do pitch good things at people still, but if the ends equal sort of service to self things, then maybe you got to consider that you've been tricked. So let's go into some more things of inversion. This one's always a little bit, what would we call it, controversial. And hey, I don't mean to offend you if you sort of go down these routes, but all I can do is just speak my truth. So here's some more inversion. There's this positive discrimination, right? This is everywhere, I'm sure, but just to give you an example, like in California, I think this was 6 months or so ago, they tried to like repeal these laws that you're allowed to sort of like discriminate against somebody based on race. And why would they do that? Well, for equity, right? They're saying, hey, you know what? We need to be anti-racist in order to not be racist. But that's basically like saying we need to be racist so that we can beat racism. Right? It's just like this inversion of truth. Even though I'm not denying that there might be reasons behind that, and trust me, I know all of the explanations. Do not comment on trying to explain why. I'm fully aware of why people want to do positive discrimination and equity, etc. But the idea is that they would literally pull a law from, that came from the times where we got rid of racism to a degree, right? It was like, what is the quote? Dr. King, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. And so like we've created this place where that to some degree that is the way that most people are trying to do. They're trying to judge you by the content of their character, and yet they're being told that no, that's actually racist. I'm so sorry. You got to come into the new age. You can't be awake anymore. You got to be woke. So I get that that's controversial, and I'm sorry if that makes you upset. Trust me, I am definitely against racism in all forms. It's just I'm not buying the inversion of truth that people are trying to sell me. I am not going to listen to people give you all these wild inverted ideas to justify the reason that they need to basically fight evil with evil. I will not do that. I mean, I suppose I'm not perfect. I'm human. I fall for it sometimes. I get a little rage building in me and get a little envious or whatever, right? But the idea is that I know then in my heart that I can't fight evil with evil. The light casts out the dark. Darkness doesn't shine, right? You can't shine darkness. You don't turn on a darkness flashlight. You turn on the flashlight, and even just within an entire room of darkness, a moment's spark can light up that whole room. So light will get rid of the darkness, and you just have to remember that, because that is the nature of the game of these tricksters, these trickster entities, is to basically just get you to fight. It's like, like we'll make it feel as justified as possible in fighting. You will have all the reasons in the world to get back at your enemy and feel justified about it, and you can tell me about it, and I'll probably agree with you that seemed like almost an appropriate thing to do. But I do know that if you're not coming from the heart of love and understanding and compassion, trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, seeing things from their perspective, and then trying to determine the best way to serve, if you're not doing that and you're just sort of tit for tatting, you've sort of fallen for the trick of the game, fallen for the black magic tricks. It's okay, you're human. That's actually why we're here, is to be confused. We're here to actually be completely confused so that we can not really understand and try to understand and make those choices. Okay? So, thank you guys for listening. This was quite all over the place, but I think that we got through a little bit of understanding about black magic and just inversion of truth. and not falling for trickery, and being aware of the tricks, and therefore you hopefully can, love your enemy. It's like, I guess, lastly, I'll just say about the service to self path in the law of one, they state somewhere that you don't you're not negating the negative path. You are looking at the negative path and a negative entity, and you look at them and you say, it's not that you're denying them. You look at them and you say, yes, I understand that you are making this choice, and that is something that you think is correct, and I choose something different. But I respect your free will to make the choices that you want to make, and have at it, but I am not going to take part in what you're selling, right? So this is sort of how, if you are a service to others person, how you can try to perceive the service to self path. We're not trying to deny them in existence. We're respecting their existence and choosing another way. I felt that's important. Okay, thank you guys for listening. Please check out my website, the1infinitecreator.com. We got links to all this stuff. You can support me on Patreon. I extremely appreciate that, as I'm trying to step into making longer podcasts in more good details in epic topics like this. You support me, and it really invigorates me to just give you my best, which I'm still going to do regardless anyways. Please like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment. Love you guys. We will talk again next week. Take care.